I've been teaching predator cubs for 6 cycles, and not once did any of them try to save someone's life with Milidarira. Shielding until the human showed up. Let me back up, you need context for this disaster, and believe me, I've had 8 cycles to think about how spectacularly unprepared I was for that morning. My name is Cathara, and I teach Xeno pedagogy at the Outer Rim Juvenile Integration Academy. Fancy title for what amounts to herding adolescent predators through basic socialization protocols so they don't eat their future colleagues. The cubs in my advanced cohort were Valith, all fur and fangs, and way too much energy for enclosed spaces. 16 of them, each about waist high when they bothered to stand on 2 legs, which they rarely did. They were good kids, curious, protective of their packmates, and generally willing to learn. Their species didn't have a lot of contact with other races before joining the coalition, so everything was new and fascinating to them. Last week they'd spent 2 hours debating whether my scales were decorative or functional. The week before that I'd caught 3 of them trying to groom my head crest. Point is, they were enthusiastic learners, just not always smart about it. The human arrived on a station transport at 600 hours. I know because I got the notification ping while I was trying to caffeinate myself into consciousness. Jordan, graduate student, anthropology. Focus, requesting permission to observe interspecies education models for her thesis research. I approved it. Why wouldn't I? We got observers all the time. Usually they sat in the back, took notes, asked a few questions afterward, and left. Simple. I should have known better when the species designation came through. Human soul 3. Native, you've heard the stories, right? The impossible physics, the bizarre chemistry, the casual disregard for basic survival instincts. I'd heard them too, thought most of it was exaggerated, space legends, you know. The sort of thing that gets embellished with every retelling until you can't separate fact from fiction. Turned out the stories weren't exaggerated enough. Jordan showed up to my classroom at 11:43 hours, 4 hours late, and looking like something had tried to digest her and given up halfway through. Her hair, this dark, tangled mess that apparently grows out of human heads, stuck out in several directions at once. The skin under her eyes had this grayish tint that I'd later learn meant exhaustion. She carried a data pad clutched against her chest like it might escape if she loosened her grip. Sorry, she said, slumping against the door frame. Station time adjustment. Didn't sleep. The cubs perked up immediately. 16 pairs of eyes locked onto the newcomer with that predator focus that still makes my scales itch sometimes. Their ears swiveled forward. A few of them rose onto their hind legs to get a better look. Not a problem, I said, keeping my voice calm and steady. The cubs fed off emotional cues, and I didn't want them getting excited. Please come in. You can observe from the back corner. We're working on trade protocol simulations today. Jordan nodded and shuffled toward the back of the room. The cubs tracked her movement with their heads perfectly synchronized. A few of them sniffed the air, sampling her scent. I saw their nostrils flare and their pupils dilate. One of the younger cubs, Kyrix, made a soft chirping sound. His packmate nudged him quiet. Is she prey? Another whispered, probably. Thinking I couldn't hear. My auditory range is excellent, thanks very much. Humans are classified as sentient. Coalition members, I said firmly, which, you all know, means species-based. Predation is illegal and morally reprehensible. Jordan is a guest and a researcher. Everyone back to your stations. They settled, but kept glancing back at. Sorry. Not hunting looks exactly more like curiosity mixed with concern. The Villeth have strong protective instincts toward their young and weak. Pack members, I figured they were just trying to categorize this strange new creature. Jordan collapsed into the observation chair like her bones had given up. She set her data pad on the small desk, positioned her hands over it like she intended to take notes, and then just sort of stopped moving. I went back to the lesson. We were covering the basics of resource negotiation between species with different dietary requirements. Good practical stuff. The cubs needed to understand that just because another species ate things they found disgusting didn't make that species inferior. So when the Thexian delegation requests protein suspensions, I explained, pulling up a holographic display, the appropriate response is not to offer them your prey animals. Can anyone tell me why? Several paws went up. I called on Vexra, one of my brighter students. Because Thexians are filter feeders, she said, her tail wagging slightly. They can't process solid matter. We'd be insulting their digestive biology. Exactly, and what would be the correct offering? Processed nutrient paste in suspension format with protein chains broken down to amino acid level. Perfect. Now let's talk about cultural tabos around food sharing. I was about 15 minutes into explaining why you shouldn't share meals with species who considered eating a private biological function when I noticed the cubs weren't paying attention anymore. All 16 of them had their heads turned toward the back corner. Their ears were flat against their skulls. A few had their hackles raised. I turned around. Jordan hadn't moved. Her head had tipped forward slightly, chin almost touching her chest. Her eyes were closed. Her breathing had slowed to this deep, regular rhythm that made her chest rise and fall in a steady pattern. And her heart rate, I could see it on the cubs' personal monitors because they'd all activated their biometric scanners had dropped significantly. She's dying, Kirk said, his voice tight with panic. What? No, she's just... But the cubs were already moving. 16 adolescent predators flowing out of their seats in perfect, coordinated silence, the way their species moves when stalking prey or protecting territory. They formed a loose circle around Jordan's chair, bodies low, tails extended for balance. Everyone back to your seats, I said, trying to project authority. Right now, they ignored me. Their attention was locked on Jordan, who continued breathing slowly and deeply, completely unaware that she'd become the center of a potential incident. Her vital signs are dropping, Vexra said, reading data off her wrist display. Heart rate down 30%. Neural activity decreased. Muscle tension nearly zero. She's entering failure state, another cub added. We need medical response. No, listen. Humans do this thing where they Kirix made a decision. He pulled the emergency beacon off his harness and activated it. The high-pitched alert tone made my head crest vibrate painfully. Medical emergency, he said into the device, his young voice trying to sound official. Unresponsive coalition member. Vital signs critical. Kirix, shut that off right now. He didn't. None of them moved. They'd gone into protection mode, which meant their higher reasoning functions had taken a backseat to instinct. I'd seen it before during emergency drills, but never directed at another student. I tried to approach Jordan's chair. 3 of the cubs shifted position, blocking my path, their lips pulled back. From their fangs, not quite threatening, but definitely a warning. "I'm your teacher," I said, keeping my voice level. "Stand down, you're trying." To ignore her distress, Vexra said, her tail lashed once. "That's neglect of pack. Member, she's not pack, she's not even Valith, she's human, and humans have different biology. Biology that's failing," Kirix insisted. "Look at the readings." I pulled up my own scanner. He wasn't wrong about the numbers. Jordan's heart rate had dropped to about 40 beats per cycle. Her breathing was slow. Brain activity showed these strange wave patterns I'd never seen before. Muscle tension was basically non-existent. If she were any species I knew, these readings would indicate severe medical distress, possibly dying, but she wasn't any species I knew. "Humans do this," I tried explaining. "It's called sleep. It's a normal biological function where they sleep." Vexra's ears flicked forward. "Like hibernation." "No, not hibernation. They do it every day for several hours. It's how they rest." The cubs looked at each other. I could see them processing this information and rejecting it as impossible. Every day they enter a death-like state. Kirix asked, "It's not death-like to them, it's normal. Their heart rate drops by 30% and they lose consciousness, and this is normal." When he put it that way, it did sound insane. Yes, the cubs didn't believe me. I could see it in their body language. The way their ears stayed flat, their tails rigid. And then, because the universe has a terrible sense of humor, Jordan's body jerked slightly, some kind of involuntary muscle spasm. Her hand twitched. Her eyes moved rapidly under their closed lids. The cubs panicked. 17 personal shield generators activated simultaneously. The emergency defensive equipment that cubs wore for training exercises that I'd never actually seen them use in real situations, all powered up at once with a sound like reality tearing. The classroom filled with overlapping energy fields, blue and crackling. Jordan disappeared behind a wall of protective barriers. The cubs pressed closer, forming a defensive perimeter around her chair and the station's main security alert started screaming. The security doors blasted open 45 seconds later, which honestly was impressive response time. Vix came through first, plasma rifle raised, his own Vilith heritage making him move like controlled violence. 2 more guards flanked him, scanning the room for threats. What they found was my classroom looking like a small war had broken out. 17 shield generators turning the air blue and fuzzy, and me standing there like an idiot trying to explain that no, really everything was fine. "Stand down," Vix barked. His voice had that command resonance that usually made cubs snap to attention immediately. My cubs didn't budge. They'd locked into protection mode completely, and breaking a Valith out of that state requires either their pack leader or the threat being neutralized. I was neither. "Officer Vix," I said, trying to sound calm and professional while my head crest was probably flashing panic colors. "There's no actual emergency. The human is just sleeping." "Sleeping?" Vix's ears flattened against his. Skull, you activated 17 emergency shields because someone was sleeping. I didn't activate anything, the Cubs did. Why? Because they think she's dying. Vic stared at me. Behind him, the other guards exchanged glances. One of them, Athexian, made a gurgling sound. That might have been laughter. Is she dying? Brix asked. No, then why do her? Vital signs read like system failure. I pulled up my data pad and forwarded him the scans. Because humans voluntarily reduce their consciousness and metabolic rate for approximately 8 hours out of every cycle. It's called sleep. It's normal. For them, Vic studied the readings, his tail twitching in that way that meant he was either confused or annoyed. Probably both. That's the stupidest evolutionary adaptation I've ever heard of. I didn't design them. Her heart rate is 42 beats per cycle, Cathera. That's normal for sleeping humans. Apparently, her brain is producing these, he gestured at the scan wave, patterns like she's having a seizure. Also normal, she's completely defenseless, unconscious. Any predator could just walk up. And he stopped, looked at the Cubs maintaining their protective circle. Though, yeah, one of the Cubs, Kirix, called out, without taking his eyes off the shield. Perimeter, we will not allow harm to reach the packmate. She's not your packmate, Vic said. She's a research observer. She's under our protection now. I pinched the bridge of my snout. Kirix, you can't just adopt random coalition members. We didn't adopt her. She joined our learning group. That makes her pack adjacent, and pack adjacent members receive full defensive protocols. Vix lowered his rifle and looked at me. Your Cubs have better tactical instincts than half my security team. That's not helping. I'm just saying, if they want to maintain a defensive perimeter around the sleeping human, there are worse ideas. Vix, what? She is incredibly vulnerable right now. Those readings don't lie. Behind the wall of shields, Jordan made a soft sound, something between a sigh and a mumble. Several Cubs tensed, ready for combat. One of them cycled through different vision spectrums on his visor, probably trying to detect invisible threats. We need to deactivate those shields, I said, before the energy drain triggers another alert. You try telling them that, Vic said. I've seen Viral protection formations before. They're not moving until either the threat is gone or someone they respect tells them to stand down. I'm their teacher. You're also the one who allegedly let her enter this dangerous state in the first place. Vix tilted his head. From their perspective, you're part of the problem. I wanted to argue, but he wasn't wrong. The Cubs had decided Jordan needed protection, and I'd failed to provide it. Therefore, I couldn't be trusted with her safety. This is ridiculous, I muttered. She's going to wake up eventually, and then we can all feel stupid about this. When Brix asked, I don't know, I'm not a human sleep specialist. Sometime in the next few hours, probably. Hours? 3 of the Cubs' ears swiveled toward me. She'll remain in this state for hours. That's what I've been trying to tell you. Kirix made a distressed sound. We need medical intervention. This can't be sustainable. It's completely sustainable for humans. They do it every single day. That's horrifying, Vexra said. What if something attacks while they're unconscious? They usually sleep in safe locations. The classroom isn't safe. We're here. You're not going to attack her. No, but we're predators. She doesn't Know that, why would she voluntarily lose consciousness surrounded by predators? I didn't have a good answer for that. Honestly, from their perspective, Jordan's behavior did seem suicidal. Vix tapped his comm unit. I'm calling medical, let them sort this out. That's just going to make it worse, I said. How could it possibly get worse? Famous last words, those. Dr. Saller arrived 12 minutes later with a full medical kit and an expression that suggested he'd rather be anywhere else. He was Kenthari, tall and crystalline structured, and absolutely hated dealing with what he called biological chaos species. The cubs didn't like him immediately. Something about his mineral-based body language read as predatory to them, even though Kanthai couldn't eat anything that wasn't pure mineral compounds. Move aside, Saller said, approaching the shield wall. The cubs pressed closer together. 2 more shield generators activated. Ones I didn't even know they had. The overlapping energy fields started creating interference patterns that made my eyes hurt. I am a medical professional, Salker said, his voice taking on that resonance that crystal beings used for authority. I need to examine the patient. She doesn't need examination, Kurik said. She needs protection. From what? From dying. Saller looked at me. Kathara, what exactly is happening here? The human is sleeping, the cubs think. She's dying. They've activated emergency protocols. Sleeping. Saller pulled out his scanner and aimed it at the general area where Jordan was, hidden behind shields. Humans do that, yes, fascinating process actually, complete voluntary unconsciousness with reduced vital signs. I read a paper about it once. Can you explain that to them? I gestured at the cubs. Saller studied his scanner readings. Her vital signs are well within normal parameters for a sleeping human. Heart rate appropriate for rest state. Brain activity shows standard sleep cycle patterns. Temperature regulation functioning normally. She's perfectly healthy. See, I said to the cubs, medical professional expert opinion. She's fine. Then why is her heart rate 40 beats per cycle? Vexra demanded. Because humans don't need faster heart rates during rest periods, Saller explained. Their cardiovascular system adjusts based on activity level. It's actually quite efficient. What about the brain patterns? Another cub asked, dreaming probably. Humans process memories and emotions during sleep through something called REM cycles. The brain activity you're seeing is completely normal. The cubs looked at each other. I could see them processing this information. Several ears twitched, tails swished uncertainly. So she's not dying? Kirix asked slowly. Not even close, Saller confirmed. But she's unconscious and defenseless, yes. And her vital signs are reduced. Correct, and this happens every day for approximately 8 hours, yes. There was a long pause, then Vexra said, very carefully, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Evolutionarily speaking, it does seem like a significant vulnerability, Saller admitted, but humans apparently evolved in an environment where they could find defensible sleeping locations, caves, elevated structures, that sort of thing. But she's not in a cave, Kurik said. She's in a classroom with 16 predators. 17 if you count me, Vix added helpfully. I glared at him. He shrugged. Perhaps Seller suggested you could deactivate the shields now that you know she's not in danger. The cubs considered this, then moving With that eerie synchronization they did. Sometimes they all shook their heads. No, Kick said, just because this is normal for humans doesn't mean it's safe. She's still vulnerable. She still needs protection. From what? I was starting to lose my patience. From anything that might happen while she's unconscious. Nothing is going to happen. This is a school. This is a station in space. Vexra corrected. Hull breach could occur. Life support could fail. Pirates could board. Emergency evacuation could be called. And she'd be unconscious through all of it. When she put it that way, sleeping in space did sound incredibly dangerous. Humans have alarm systems, Seller said. Loud sounds wake them up. Alarm systems can fail. Vexra said, we've learned this. In safety protocols, no system is perfect. Redundancy is essential. You're not a redundancy system, I said. Your students were PAC corrected. And PAC protects its members. Behind the shields, Jordan shifted in. Her chair made another soft sound. Her head lolled to one side. Every cub tensed. Weapon systems on there. Harnesses powered up with soft whines. One of them started scanning for airborne pathogens. This is insane, I said to no one in particular. This is protocol, Crick said. We've been trained for emergency response. This is an emergency. It's really not. Agree to disagree. Vix was trying very hard not to laugh. I could see his shoulders shaking. When I looked at him, he coughed and pretended to adjust his rifle. What do you suggest we do? I asked Saller. The doctor packed up his scanner. Honestly, wait for her to wake up. Once she's conscious and moving around normally, the cubs will see that she's fine and hopefully deactivate the shields. How long will that take? However long. Humans need to sleep. A few hours. Probably. I can't keep my class locked down for hours. Why not? Vix asked. Good defensive exercise for them. Character building. That's not how education works. But I was starting to realize that I'd lost control of this situation entirely. The cubs had made their decision. Jordan was PAC now, whether she knew it or not, and PAC protected its own, even from dangers that didn't actually exist. Saller's comm unit chirped. He checked it, and his crystalline features somehow managed to convey dismay. Problem? I asked. Minor one, he said. The cubs apparently used their emergency beacons to contact their families. Standard protocol when PAC member is endangered. My head crest went completely flat. Please tell me you're joking. I wish I was. Apparently, 17 sets of parents just received alerts that their offspring are in defensive formation around a dying coalition member. Vic stopped trying to hide his laughter, and my classroom door chimed with an incoming transmission. The display showed 3 ships changing course toward our station. Valith tribal vessels. The cubs had called for backup. The emergency meeting convened in Headmaster Trell's office at 13:20 hours, which meant I had exactly 20 minutes to explain how a sleeping graduate student had triggered an interspecies diplomatic incident. Trell was Canthari like Saller, but where? The doctor had a scientist's detached curiosity. Trell had an administrator's perpetual exhaustion. His crystalline structure refracted the office lights in ways that made him look like he was glowing with irritation. Let me make sure I understand, he said, his voice doing that resonance thing that made my bones itch. We have 3 Valith tribal vessels en route. Because your students think a human is Dying. Correct, I said, but she's not dying. Also correct, she's sleeping, yes. And your students have maintained a defensive perimeter around her for he checked his display, 93 minutes now. They're very committed. Tell pressed his palms flat on his desk. The crystal made a sound like wind chimes. Dying, the Valeth Council is demanding an explanation for why we allowed a prey species to enter a death state in a room full of predators. She's not prey, and it's not a death state. Try explaining that to 3 warships. The door opened and Salar entered, looking even more resigned than usual. The human is still asleep. The cubs have now organized a rotation schedule, 8 on active guard, 8 on rest cycle, 1 coordinating communications. They organized a rotation schedule. Trell repeated, they're very tactical, I said weakly. They're 16 years old. Very mature, faster than most species, and they've had excellent emergency response training. Trell made a sound like breaking glass. This is exactly why I opposed allowing human exchange students. They're too unpredictable, too biologically strange. To Headmaster. Vix interrupted from where he'd been standing by the door. The tribal vessels are hailing us. Put them through. The holographic display activated, showing 3 Vilith elders. Full-grown adults of the species were significantly larger than the cubs and considerably more intimidating. Their fur was silver with age marked with clan symbols. Their eyes had that predator focus that made every prey instinct I'd inherited scream at me to run. The center elder, a female with a scar across her muzzle, spoke first. I am Elder Krath of the Silver Fang clan. We received emergency signals from our young. They report one of their pack is dying and your facility is providing inadequate protection. Elder Krathtrell said, somehow managing to sound diplomatic despite being crystal in structure and stress. I assure you no one is dying. There has been a misunderstanding about human biology. We've reviewed the vital signs data. Cubs transmitted, another elder said. Heart rate reduced by 30%, neural activity abnormal, muscle control absent. These are death state indicators. For your species, yes, Salar interjected. For humans, these are normal sleep parameters. The elders looked at each other. Krarev's ears flicked back. Explain sleep. Humans require approximately 8 hours of reduced consciousness per day cycle. Salar said, during this time their metabolic process is slow, their brain activity shifts to different patterns, and they become temporarily unaware of their surroundings. It's a biological necessity for their neural function. The 3rd elder, an older male with graying fur around his muzzle, leaned forward. They voluntarily become unconscious every day. Yes, while defenseless. Essentially, that's the most idiotic evolutionary adaptation I've encountered in 40 years of coalition membership. I was starting to think humans should add that to their species description. Humans evolutionarily idiotic since before space travel. It works for them, Salar said. Defensively, their home world apparently has fewer large predators than most habitable planets. They evolved with the luxury of finding safe sleeping locations. Safe, Krath's tail lashed once. Nothing about voluntary unconsciousness is safe. What if there's an emergency? What if the habitat fails? What if predators attack? They wake up, I said, loud. Sounds, physical contact, danger. Signals all trigger awakening. How? Quickly, I looked at Salar. He shrugged. Depends on sleep depth, anywhere from immediately to several seconds. Several seconds. The male Ellers's ears went flat. Unacceptable. In several seconds, a predator can kill. A hull can breach. Life support can fail. This human is endangered simply by existing in her natural state, which is why our cubs are maintaining protection. Krath said they're following proper pack protocols. When a member is vulnerable, the pack defends. Trell's crystalline structure flickered with what I'd learned to recognize as a headache. Elder Kraft, the human, is not actually part of their pack. She's an exchange student observing their class. She was present in their learning space. That makes her pack adjacent. Pack adjacent members receive protection protocols. She was there for 4 hours. Time is irrelevant. Presence equals pack bond. For young Valeth, it's instinctive. Krath's expression softened slightly. Your cubs are behaving exactly as they should. They identified a vulnerable pack member and responded with appropriate defensive measures. This is proper conduct. I felt something in my understanding of the situation shift. The cubs weren't being irrational or overreacting. They were being perfectly rational, according to their own biology and cultural values. A pack member was vulnerable, so they protected her. Simple. The problem was that Jordan didn't need protection, but the cubs couldn't comprehend that because their species literally didn't have an equivalent to sleep. Elder Kraft, I said carefully, do Villith not have any form of rest state? We have rest. She said, we reduce activity, lower energy consumption, enter meditative awareness, but we remain conscious. We remain alert. We can respond to threats immediately. So you never become unconscious. Not voluntarily. No, unconsciousness indicates severe injury or system failure. It's a state to be avoided. The male elder added, our evolutionary path included significant predation pressure. Species that slept were eliminated. We developed rest cycles that maintain defensive capability. So from your perspective, Salar said, slowly, humans voluntarily enter a state that your species only experiences when dying. Correct, and you find this horrifying. Extremely. In the background of the transmission, I could hear other voices. The elders were apparently on their ship's command decks, surrounded by crew who were all presumably listening to this conversation about the insane prey species that chose to be defenseless for a third of every day. Trell looked like he wanted to dissolve into his component minerals and blow away. What would it take to resolve this situation peacefully? Proof, Krath said immediately. Proof that this human will wake up unharmed. That this sleep state is truly reversible and not a death process. She'll wake up naturally in a few hours. I said a few hours. The male Ellers's ears flattened completely. Unacceptable. We cannot maintain battle ready positioning for hours based on promises. We need immediate proof. How do we provide that? Trill asked. The elders conferred among themselves in their own language, which my translator struggled with. Too many subsonic components. Finally, Krath turned back to us. Wake her up, she said. Demonstrate that this sleep state can be interrupted safely. Show us she's not locked in dying process. That seems reasonable, Trell said, looking relieved. Then Krath continued, she must Demonstrate entering and exiting this sleep state multiple times in front of witnesses so we can verify the process is truly safe and reversible. The relief drained from Trell's expression, you want us to wake up a sleeping human and then ask her to fall asleep again repeatedly while you watch, yes, in front of 3 tribal elders, station, administration, and 16 terrified cubs. Also, yes. That's insane. That's proof, Krath said firmly. Your species claims this is normal biology. Prove it if humans can truly enter and exit this death state voluntarily and safely. Demonstrate it. I looked at Vix. He was grinning, which meant he found this entire situation hilarious and was absolutely no help. Salar had his head in his hands, or the crystal equivalent. Trell looked like he was calculating how much of his pension he'd lose if he just resigned immediately. And in my classroom, Jordan was still sleeping peacefully, completely unaware that she was about to become the subject of an interspecies biological demonstration in front of an audience that found her mere existence terrifying. I'll wake her up, I said, because apparently I decided today was the day I threw away the last shreds of my dignity and career. Excellent, Krath said. We're docking in 18 minutes. Prepare your demonstration. Space. The transmission ended. Tell looked at me. I'm putting this entire incident your permanent file. That's fair, I said, with detailed notes, I assumed. And you're writing the updated species interaction protocols. All of them, every single one. I headed back to my classroom to wake up a human and explain that she needed to perform her biological functions on command for an alien audience. This was definitely not in my original job description. The walk back to my classroom felt like trudging toward an execution. My execution specifically. Academic, professional, and quite possibly literal if this demonstration went wrong. Vix accompanied me, still grinning, like this was the best entertainment he'd had in cycles. You know, he said, in all my years doing station security, I've never seen anyone accidentally trigger a diplomatic incident with a nap. Your support is overwhelming, I said. I'm just saying this is going in the training manual, how not to handle cross-species biology. I hate you, that's fair. We reached the classroom door. I could hear the cubs inside talking in low voices. They'd maintained their defensive perimeter for over 2 hours now. Professional soldiers would be impressed. I was mostly horrified. I opened the door. 16 pairs of eyes locked onto me immediately. The cubs had indeed organized a rotation system. 8 were actively positioned around Jordan's still shield-protected chair, weapons ready. 8 more were resting in a loose secondary perimeter, but clearly ready to spring into action. Kirik stood in the center, coordinating everything with a tactical display on his wrist unit. Teacher Cathara, he said. Formally status. The tribal elders are arriving in 16 minutes. I said they want proof that Jordan is safe. She is safe. Vexra said. We've maintained complete defensive coverage. No threats have breached the perimeter. I know, you've all done excellent work. I meant it too. Their instincts were good, their coordination was flawless, and their commitment was absolute. They were just protecting the wrong thing from the wrong threat. But now we need to wake her up. The cubs went very still, several ears flattened. Tails stopped moving. Wake her, Kirix. Repeated, but the medical professional said she needs approximately 8 hours of this sleep state. She does usually, but we need to prove to your elders that she can wake up safely. Interrupting biological processes can cause damage, Vexra said. We learned this in health protocols. For most species, yes, but humans are apparently different. They can be woken up without harm. The cubs looked at each other. I could see them processing this, comparing it against everything they'd learned about biology and safety, finding it completely contradictory. I'm going to approach Jordan now, I said. Carefully, I'm going to wake her up. I need you all to deactivate the shields and give me space. They didn't move. That's an order from your teacher. With respect, Carrick said, our pack loyalty supersedes educational hierarchy. Of course it did. Why would I expect anything else at this point? Fine, I said, keep the shields up, but let me through them. After a tense moment they parted slightly. Carrick adjusted something on his wrist unit, and a small gap opened in the shield wall just large enough for me to squeeze through. Jordan was still asleep in the chair, head tilted at an angle that had to be uncomfortable. Her mouth was slightly open. She was actually drooling a little bit. Somehow this made her seem even more vulnerable. I reached out and gently touched her shoulder. Jordan, you need to wake up. Nothing happened. I shook her slightly. Jordan, she made a sound, something between a groan and a protest. Her eyes remained closed. This isn't working, Kirk said, his voice tight with worry. She's not responding to stimulus. She's fine. She's just deeply asleep. I shook her harder. Jordan. Her eyes opened. She blinked at me, completely confused. Then she looked around at the shield wall, the armed cubs, Vic standing by the door with his rifle, and her expression shifted through several emotions too quickly to categorize. What? She said slowly. The hell happened? You fell asleep in my class, I said. And you called the military. The cubs called the military, also their parents, and now 3 tribal elders are coming to verify you're not dying. Jordan stared at me, then at the cubs, then back at me. I was asleep for like an hour. How did things escalate this badly? 2 hours, and the Valith don't have sleep. They thought you were dying. I was Jordan. Process this. They don't sleep at all. They rest while remaining conscious. Sleep is biologically foreign to them. So when I passed out in their classroom, they initiated emergency protection protocols, because from their perspective you were experiencing system failure. Jordan looked at the cubs, who were still maintaining their defensive positions. Several of them had their weapons partially raised, like they weren't quite sure if she was really okay or just temporarily stabilized. You guys thought I was dying, she asked them. Curix nodded. Your vital signs indicated critical failure, heart rate reduced by 30%, neural activity abnormal, complete loss of consciousness, and defensive capability. These are death state indicators. For your species, maybe for me that's just Thursday afternoon. Jordan rubbed her eyes. I appreciate the concern, but I'm fine. Humans need sleep. We're supposed to be unconscious for like 8 hours a day. 8 hours. Several cubs made distressed sounds. Voluntarily, Vexra asked. Well, not really voluntary. We get tired. We have to sleep. If we don't, we start hallucinating and eventually collapse. The cubs looked horrified. Kirix's tail went completely rigid. Your species requires entering a death-like state or you begin experiencing neural degradation. When you put it that way, it sounds worse than it is. How could it possibly be worse? Vexra demanded. The door chimed. Tell's voice came through the calm. The elders are docking. We need Jordan in the main assembly hall in 5 minutes. Jordan looked at me. Assembly hall, they want you to demonstrate sleeping, I said. Prove it safe and reversible. They want me to take a nap in front of an audience on command. Essentially, yes, that's not how sleep works, I know. I can't just fall asleep because someone tells me to. Can you try? Jordan stood up, wobbling slightly. Cubs tensed, ready to catch her if she fell. She waved them off. I'm okay, just stiff from sleeping in a chair. We walked to the assembly hall, escorted by 16 armed cubs who refused to leave. Jordan unprotected. Vix, who was documenting everything for what he claimed were official purposes, and my rapidly disappearing professional reputation. The elders were waiting, 3 massive veil adults who made the cubs look like toys. They examined Jordan with that predator focus that made my survival instinct scream. Krath stepped forward. You are the human Jordan, she said. Yes, I understand. There's been some concern. Your vital signs indicate you were dying. I was sleeping. We do not understand this. Sleep. Jordan took a breath. I could see her switching into academic mode, the same tone she probably used for her thesis research. Sleep is a naturally recurring state of reduced consciousness that most mammals require for survival. During sleep, the body performs critical maintenance, memory consolidation, cellular repair, hormone regulation. Without it, humans experience cognitive impairment, emotional instability, and eventually death. So you must enter a death-like state to avoid actual death, the male elder said. That's a really grim way to phrase it. But technically, yes. And during this state, you are completely defenseless. Pretty much. What if predators attack? We usually sleep somewhere safe, like homes with locked doors. What if your habitat fails? Alarms wake us up. What if the alarms fail? Jordan paused. Then we have a really bad day, the elders confer among themselves. Krath turned back to Jordan. Demonstrate this sleep. Enter the state. Then exit it. Prove to us this is truly reversible. I can't just fall asleep on command. Jordan said it takes time, usually. Happens when I'm tired. You appeared tired when you arrived at the classroom. Yeah, but I just slept for 2 hours. I'm not tired anymore. The elders looked at each other, then at me, then at Trell, who was doing his best impression of a crystalline statue, who wanted to be anywhere else. The human cannot demonstrate her own biological function, Krath asked. Not on demand, apparently, Trell said weakly. This was going badly. I could see the elders' ears flattening, their tails beginning to lash. They thought we were refusing to provide proof, that we were hiding something. Jordan must have seen it too, because she said quickly, okay, look, I can't fall asleep right now, but I can explain what happens when I do, the biological process, the measurable changes, and I can show you the research data from human sleep studies. She pulled out her data pad and started projecting charts and graphs, brain wave patterns during different sleep stages, heart rate variations, metabolic changes. She walked them through REM cycles, circadian rhythms, Sleep architecture. The elders listened, their ears gradually came forward. Their postures shifted from aggressive to curious. This is remarkable, the older male elder said finally, inefficient and dangerous. But remarkable. Your neural patterns during sleep show processing activity we associate with conscious thought. Dreams, Jordan explained, we process memories and emotions while sleeping. Scientists think it's how we consolidate information, so you remain partially active even while unconscious. In a way, yes. Krath studied the data for a long moment, then she looked at the cubs, who'd maintained their protective formation throughout the entire explanation. Your defensive protocols were correct. She told them, when you identified a pack member in a vulnerable state, you provided protection. This is proper behavior. Kirix's tail started wagging. Several other cubs perked up. However, Krath continued, this human's vulnerable state is normal for her species. She will enter it repeatedly. You cannot maintain active defense every time she sleeps. Why not? Vexra asked. Because you need rest yourselves, and she apparently requires 8 hours of sleep per day. You be on permanent guard duty. The cubs looked at each other. I could see them doing the math. 8 hours a day every day. That was a significant commitment. We could establish a rotation schedule, Kirix suggested. Different cubs on watch different days. Or Jordan said gently, I could just lock my door when I sleep like humans normally do. Locks can be breached. Vexra said immediately. She'll be fine, I said firmly. We in LT Unc and GTLL establish new protocols, safe sleeping areas for humans, alert systems, whatever makes everyone comfortable. Krath nodded slowly. This is acceptable. We will add human sleep requirements to the coalition biological database. All species should be educated on this unique adaptation. It's really not that unique, Jordan said. Most mammals sleep. Most mammals are not coalition members who we might encounter in vulnerable states. The male elder said this information is critical for proper interaction protocols. Trell looked like he just realized he was going to have to update every single species interaction manual in the database. His crystalline structure actually flickered. The elders departed. The cubs reluctantly deactivated their shields. Jordan returned to her assigned quarters, escorted by 3 cubs who insisted on verifying her door locks were functional. I made it back to my office and collapsed into my chair. On my desk was a formal notice from administration. I was now head of the Xenobiology Sleep Education Initiative. Wonderful, my commune chimed. Message from Jordan, thanks for not letting me get eaten. Want to grab dinner? I promise not to fall asleep in it. Despite everything, I laughed. 2 weeks later, I walked past the student lounge and found Jordan asleep on a couch. 3 shield generators hummed softly around her. A rotation schedule was posted on the wall. The cubs had color-coded it. I didn't even try to stop them. Some battles weren't worth fighting. And honestly, the universe could probably use more people who took protecting their packmates seriously. Even the packmates with stupid evolutionary adaptations.